You look quite exquisite.
Yes.
How do you wish to proceed today?
I wish to expand my estate.
I wish to vanquish my foe.
Let's have the peons do it for us.
Oh, but won't the poor resist?
They have such low power, how could they possibly stop us? Oh, pooh. They seem to have died.
Kitty, raise them.
Nethroi, Apex of Death. For 2 white, black, green, you get a 5/5 legendary creature Cat Nightmare Beast with Death Touch and Lifelink. It says whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And Nethroi also has Mutate. So for 4, a hybrid white-green, and 2 pips of black, you can cast this spell for its Mutate cost. And when you cast it for its Mutate cost, you can put it on top or on bottom of any target non-human creature you own. It will become whatever creature's on top, plus all the text boxes beneath it. It will be a single creature that mutates once Nethroi enters. This cost is affected by command text, but it is the main way we want to play this commander. And it's the only card with Mutate in the deck. This deck puts you in a position of power, with low power creatures and a pretty kitty that doesn't stop playing with its food at all. Death isn't the end for our creatures. It's just part of the job. We get to sit on our aristocratic high horse and watch as your opponents scramble to find an answer for this extra explosive deck. And just like diarrhea, this explosive mess is really hard to clean up.
Congratulations on the second poop joke of the channel.
I guess it does pay to do potty humor. I'd like to thank my mom and Taco Bell. In this deck, this kitty has a whole litter of creatures to choose from, most of which find ways to bury other creatures before they even have a chance at life. Don't worry, because that isn't where their story ends. We have a plan for them. You get some tasty bodies out of the grave and then turn their dry-aged meats into power on the streets. Then when we become rather famished, we can recurring them ad nauseum with an audience of aristocrats pieces dishing out death to the demons who oppose us by way of 1,000 paper cuts. And I refer to the opponents here as demons because they scare me. We have to really prime this engine though before it gets going. So what are we gonna do to make that happen? And what are you gonna do about subscribing? I've been talking with your parents lately, and they aren't too pleased to hear that I know their numbers. And I got scared, so I told them I was your friend. So could you subscribe, please? And now that we've taken care of that, let's prime this engine and start mowing down all those who question your superiority. Discerning Taste. For 2 into black, you get a sorcery that says look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. You gain life equal to the greatest power among creature cards put into your graveyard this way. You get to choose on this one. Sneak your favorite snack of the 4 into your hand, and then plant the others firmly into your second hand, the grave. Okay, there's a lot of cannibalism jokes in this video. YouTube, they're only jokes. The algorithm's gonna eat me alive for this one. The life gain truly is inconsequential. Our commander is already a 5/5 base with Death Touch and Lifelink, so we don't have to worry about that life at all. The fact that we can choose any card amongst it is important, so don't let it go to the grave just because it has great power. The highest power creature in this deck is 3. Not a lot. A good number of cards operate just like Discerning Taste in this deck. They just don't pick out your favorite card. Instead, they put them all into your grave, like Circle of Land Druid. It throws all the cards in the grave, so we don't get the chance to sneak something into our hand. That makes it a pretty open book here. It isn't the worst thing though. Just because they can read this book doesn't mean they can stop this horror story. And if you're following along with the class, you'll notice that the Circle of Lands Druid is also a creature. So if it goes to the grave, we can get it back and recur it like that filthy druid peasant that it is. And that's true for a ton of these cards as well. In fact, there's barely any non-creatures in this deck. Satyr Wayfinder skims the top 4 of the library while taking a land from among them into your hand, ensuring you can make your next land drop. Eccentric Farmer does pretty much the same thing, but allows you to pull any land from the grave at the cost of 1 less card bin from the library. Blanchwood Prowler smacks down for 2, but reduces your library problem by 3, and can even take a land from those 3, put it into your hand. Carrion Grub is a 4-drop that mills for 4, but once it's on the field, it'll get a little bigger based on the pile of death we've established. And finally, Stitcher's Supplier is a classic card that takes 6 cards out of your library, but pays out in installments. You get the first 3 up front, and the last 3 when you finally do the dirty deed. And if you notice the power of all these things, done dirt cheap. And if you were to find all of them in the graveyard and cast Nethroi, you'd only have 6 power of the available 10 being returned. Then they all continue on the grave mill plan, all on their own. And once you have a healthy grave maid, you don't even need to keep returning them anymore. They will understand. Sometimes the team just needs you more on the bench. Can you blame them? Did you even look at the cards that we got? Yeah, let's start off with a little easy one, shall we?
Tristani's Summoner. For 5 green-white, you get a 1/1 creature elf shaman that says when Tristani's Summoner enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance, a 3/3 green centaur creature token, and a 4/4 green rhino creature token with trample.
Sorry, didn't mean to say easy. We ended up going with a pretty busted card. Tristani's favorite little elf shaman has 1 power at base, but then when they enter, they bring the whole freaking zoo with them. It's kind of funny seeing a bajillion power enter out of nowhere while only taking up 1 power of our commander's 10. I have an idea. Let's start a tally of how much power we're adding to that 10. Right there. I'm not including Tristani. I did the math already and I realized later I didn't add Tristani, the summoner. Nope, not doing it. Can't convince me. Violent Tumor gets us a creature out of our deck for 2. Not bad, really. Just literally anything 1 out of our deck. Still shocks me that this card is less than 50 cents. Whatever's causing that to happen, never change. Workhorse is a super dork that does a good amount of work for us. And honestly, it doesn't matter that it costs 6 mana, because we get 4 out of it. Oh, and would you look at that? No power. The tally is not touched by such a pitiful power. Primal Druid gets out and gives us more permanent source of mana when it dies. And don't worry, it will. And that way we can keep ramping out and not worry about the commander becoming more and more expensive. Mindless Automaton lives in our grave, but also allows us to draw a card. We don't mind that it dies from removing those counters, because obviously this is just as good to us in the grave as it is on the field. Not only does it have 0 power as well, yeah, it still hasn't changed, but it can take a mana to discard any card out of our hand and put another counter on it. That way you can set up your grave for some better options just in case we have a few things we still want to pitch. Greenseeker adds 1 to the tally, but lets us pitch whatever we want to get any basic land out of our deck into our hand. Not a bad trade-off, since lands work better in our hand anyway. Well, unless we get a World Shaper. Then I guess we want them in the grave, because we'll get all of them back. Add 3 to the tally! Wait, what's the count at? It's at 6. So let's take better advantage of it. Wall of Blossoms and Wall of Omens will draw us a card when they enter, so we get through our deck a little bit faster. But that still doesn't work. It's still 6. Spike Weaver allows us to fog 2 combats for 1 mana each, and then still only add a fat nothing to that total. Well, at least Fertilid will let us ramp. And what? Yeah, it's powerless. No power. Nothing. And that's nice. How about we add some actual power though? Insidious Fungus. Add 1! This lets us pay 2 to recycle it, but either remove an artifact, enchantment, or land from our hand. Steve? Oh, and I also want that Discerning Taste back, so
Can I get a witness as well?
that's 10 power. I was able to get 12 creatures out with a single use of that ability. That's a little crazy. Even crazier so that I'm about to add Boss's Chauffeur to that list. Still 10 power, but now you have a creature with a number of counters on it equal to 1 plus the existing creatures and an additional counter for each other ETB after it. It'll essentially enter, you'll count the number of creatures that you have on the field, and then you put that many counters on the Chauffeur. So if you have a Nethroi and the 12 other creatures we just mentioned, it'll be a 14/14 when it enters, and it makes 14 creatures when it dies. And I would like 14 creatures, so let's murder a Chauffeur and all the passengers that get out of their really, really long limo. Let's make it a party. Let's celebrate.
Cruel Celebrant. For a white and a black, you get a 1/2 creature vampire that says whenever Cruel Celebrant or another creature or planeswalker you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life.
Oops, all aristocrats. It's been aristocrats the whole time. We got a ton of the aristocrats pieces that you know and love. We don't have to worry that our creatures are low power. Their death will mean more to us than any amount of combat damage that they will ever do. We'll use the effects like Vindictive Vampires that boop our opponents on the nose until it starts to bleed. And I mean, a lot. If we were to just take into account the last example and trade the World Shaper for a Yahenni and a Zulaport Cutthroat, then we're going to have 15 creatures enter. Do all the effects, and then more importantly, create 15 more token creatures that we get the privilege to take out as well. That's somewhere on the realm of 29 damage, as long as we take our commander with everything else. Then Yahenni will be left behind, but like super indestructible. And then we've gained 29 life. Then we're left with the single Yahenni that can then later become a 5/5 kitty cat to repeat the whole cycle. And if we pull out a Viscera Seer and that Cruel Celebrant instead of Yahenni, Then let's see, 16 sack one for 16 more, so then you'll have 30 more. At most, you could do 64, but usually do 63 because you want to leave at least one creature behind, like the sack outlet. So that's 63. 63 life that your opponents will lose, and 63 life you'll gain. And 63 is a lot. What is that? That should be death for any normal opponent. And as long as you're not almost dead on either commander damage or poison, it's a pretty nice life boost for you. You could also put your commander on a Flesh Eater Imp, which by my calculations is gross. Because not only does it have infect, but it also has flying. That makes Nethroi, or as we can call them now, Decklist, a massive flying Death Touch lifelink infect creature that boosts its own power by sacking the board it already reanimated. And to boot, it can eat itself, so you can recycle the commander once you're done hurting the board physically with one particular opponent emotionally. And that's how this deck kisses people. Oh, I think it corrected for kills. I guess kisses works. And that's how this deck kisses people. It forces them to address your graveyard, which there is some protection for, but it also makes it so that you can play the deadliest game of solitaire possible. And whether it's ETB or LTB, this deck gets you the value that is just too weird to stop. Too many not that great things coming out and causing a panic. Pretty difficult to threat assess. That's not even to mention the fact that the whole package is still sitting comfortably at around $30, so you can dominate on a dime.
And speaking of being a dime, would you be a dime and hold? Well, here, I'll just put it through. I gotta go upload it real quick. Okay, that should do it. What? Thank you. That is a lot. Kind of crazy. I don't know why the last video blew up. It just did. And if you're still here, even better. And also a big thank you to my joke tier member, Picard001. They make antique hats for babies. You ever thought of that? No, because you're not as cool as them. Okay, you are. I'd also like to give a thank you to all of my higher power members. Peanut Butter Steve, thanks. Devin Spooner, awesome. We also got Hayal, Jennifer Griffith, Filthy Casual, Ezelvor, 8Train, and Angela Ryder. All of you, immensely grateful for your support. And to all my budget members, thank you for supporting the channel. And if you'd like to become a member, pretty easy, honestly. It's just down there. It says join. I don't know. I think it'd be pretty cool. The one way you can directly support me consistently until I make a Patreon. Don't think I will. Not sure about that.